Hello and welcome to the Humanizing Data podcast brought to you by Morpheus Group. So my name is Sean Kennedy and I'll be your host. So I help lead the AI and emerging tech team offering here at Morpheus for the USA. So as a business, we do top to bottom recruitment for a number of businesses ranging from your large consultancies all the way down to your specialist niche players within the market across the board from engineering to go-to-market hires. The reason for the podcast is we get to have the luxury of talking to many influential and senior leadership people within the AI and emerging tech space, getting to know their predictions, the trends, insights, the challenges that they see coming both in the present and the future within the industry. We thought it would be valuable to start a podcast where we can share this with a wider audience and help get networks going from there. So we hope you enjoy it. Hopefully many more episodes to follow and look forward to presenting and bringing them to you. Thanks a lot. First and foremost, Gilad, thanks so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be your inaugural host, guest.
Indeed. Some may say you're a brave man, but yeah, hopefully the first of many. So, of course, gave a very quick background from you in there, but if you could tell us in your own words your sort of journey, where you're up to at the minute, and what the future looks like for Gilad Barash.
Yeah, so I actually kind of stumbled into computers. I was born and raised in Israel. I grew up there and went to the army there and actually started doing computers in the Israeli Defense Forces, and then moved to the United States working in the US and going to school here. I did a bachelor's and a master's degree in computer science at San Diego State University. And worked at HP for about 10 years and just kind of stumbled from one position to another that back in the day was called, data mining. And it just at some point became the data science role that we talk about today. And then I've been at Distillery, which is an audience solutions company, for about 9 years now. And like you said, I'm VP of analytics at Distillery. We tell data stories. We try to understand consumer behavior that is interesting for brands, how they can engage with them. So that's kind of the journey.
Excellent. And of course, we alluded to you're also a podcaster in your own right, and probably a much better one at the minute than me. So keen to learn from you as much as possible. But what inspired you to start that podcast? And just for people that haven't seen it, what's the sort of meaning behind it?
So who's your data? And the correct way to say it is who's your data? And the podcast was inspired. This came about during the pandemic when I was sitting at home. I was lucky enough to be working, continue to work, but it gave me a lot of time to think about where I am in the industry, what is next for me, what is my voice, what is my perspective, do I have one? And thinking about how do I share it, do I want to share it? And when I realized that I do want to share my perspective, I felt like I had a unique voice that I wanted to share. The podcast seemed like a great platform to do that. So it just kind of developed throughout the pandemic as sort of a little passion project of mine. It is the tagline for the podcast is how data influences life and how life influences data. And we talk about all the different kind of ways where our lives intersect with data and vice versa. Everything that we do, whether it's our phone usage, where we walk, where we go, what we watch, is all data to somebody. And how does that data get used? How does it influence us? We talk a lot about artificial intelligence and machine learning, the kind of data that gets used for it, but it's also a platform to talk about diversity and inclusivity in tech, how that's important both for the workforce and the teams, as well as the product that you're producing and why it's important to maintain that. And you had mentioned before the latest episode that is out now that talks about inclusive product design, talks exactly about that, how you really need to be cognizant and focus on all different parts of society in order to answer everybody's problem, not just specific, maybe dominant groups.
Yeah, excellent. So that's really good to hear. And just going back to to your own journey. So, of course, Israeli Defense Forces, and kind of stumbled across it. What was it about data at that point? Obviously, you've mentioned how important it is now in terms of the use in day-to-day life. And for me personally, before this, I worked in cloud and digital recruitment across Scandinavia, was fortunate enough to start doing some stuff in areas like AI, RPA, fell in love with it really and decided that was what I wanted to go and pursue. But in terms of your own sort of story, how exactly did you stumble across it, and what was it that then inspired you to take that on?
The inspiration started in grad school when I was doing a master's in computer science with the focus of what was then called data mining, based on a course that I took that just looked at data and found patterns, and stories would emerge from that, narratives would emerge from that. And that was fascinating to me, that you walk into a problem, you get a data set, you know nothing about it, and you, instead of applying your own biases and your own narratives that are preconceived, and you make decisions ahead of time about what you're trying to do or what you want to do, you let the data speak and you let the stories and the narrative emerge from it. And then you decide what to do and how to utilize that and what strategic decisions to make. It led me to doing my master's thesis on the topic, utilizing different machine learning algorithms. And from then on, even though my position, the work that I was doing at the time at HP, I was a technical support engineer, I started utilizing the knowledge that I had acquired at school into projects that I did on my own at work. One of the things that I tried to do at the time was to predict customer satisfaction of support calls that came in, and to then decide perhaps to route the calls differently based on their priority and based on the satisfaction score that we predicted that call might get. We may be able to head off at the pass any issues with satisfaction. And so that's where it kind of started all clicking for me, what you can do with data and how it can really affect any part of your life, any part of your work. And from then on, it just became this process of different positions that were related to that. And one thing led to another. I ended up at HP Labs, which was the research and development arm of HP at the time, working on innovative algorithms to try to predict issues around server logs and behavior in a server farm. And, just one thing led to another.
Yep, definitely. And it's interesting, like you said, it'd be pretty hard for you not to have found your calling within data, with it now being in every walk of life. And if it wasn't one thing, you'd think another thing would have sparked it. But take data out of the situation for a minute, and all them years ago, if it wasn't available, what would Gilad Barash be outside of the technical world? What else do you think you would have done?
That's a really interesting question. And I think the answer is hidden in the question of the data and what I do with the data. So I talked about, my passion around data is communicating data stories and translating that data into something, into a narrative, into helping people make decisions or understand the world that they live in. And so I think that if you took the data out of the picture, the communication part is what would be interesting to me. So I imagine it would be something around some kind of PR or something where, I guess you talk for a living.
Yes, much like myself. But no, that's what interests me as well. It doesn't seem to matter whatever area of AI recruitment I'll be working on, whether it be computer, conversational, health tech. The main focus is, what story can we find from this data and what can it tell us? So that's the interesting thing that applies to all these different areas. And like you said, it really is in every area of life now. So it's been a colorful journey for you so far. Just going back along some of the big companies you've worked for, and where you are today, what would you say are probably your proudest moments or biggest achievements within the data sphere from them to now?
Well, I will say it's, beyond, any kind of, well, let me start that over. I think that when I look back, my biggest achievements that I am most proud of are really little everyday things that changed the course of my career or were impactful. So for example, like I had mentioned, I am a firm believer that you make your own opportunities, that you have to be attentive, and you don't just sit around waiting for an opportunity to fall in your lap. You go out looking for them, you go out creating them, and then things start to align. And so to me, the greatest achievements of my career are the pivots that I was able to take in my career based on things that I had done, and things, especially if it were things that I created or manifested. For example, the project that I talked about that I did early on as a tech support engineer, trying to utilize some, today we call them machine learning algorithms, back then it was data mining, to try to predict satisfaction scores of surveys, was my own little project, but it got the attention of the R&D department, who were at the time happened to be working on a predictive analytics project for enterprise IT solutions. And this sort of fit right in, it garnered their interest, and it resulted in my transfer to R&D and becoming a operations research engineer on that team. And so it's these little things that you do on an ongoing basis that change the course of your career are the things that I'm proud of.
Yeah.
And one other thing that I would say, that just looking at it from like a stepping back and looking at a bigger picture, I think that another thing that it's important to be proud of is looking back at yourself. I will just say that as a young closeted gay boy in the 80s living in Tel Aviv, I could not imagine what my life would look like in the future. And I used to dream about, okay, I would be, living my true self. I would be in some big international city. I would have a fulfilling career, and I would be able to really just be my true self. And realizing that that's actually where I am today, and that I manifested that. I'm living in New York City. I have a great career. I made it happen. Those things that the young middle school kid that was sitting there and not knowing where the future was going to take him, the achievement that I made it happen is, I think, something that everybody should be proud of.
Yeah, 100%. And that's one thing that stood out for me. Listening to your podcast, you did a very specialized version on sort of coming out, or your journey within that, and then of course your conversation, which was out yesterday with Josh. And before me and you jumped on this, of course, I was saying, how interesting and brave you are for that, both of you. But for anyone else that may be in a similar situation to you, what advice could you give them, and what groups are there? I think you mentioned one about being out in tech was where you met. Josh, could you tell us a bit more about that, and advice for, say, anyone else in a similar situation?
Yeah, I would say, you referenced an episode that I did last month. I think October 11 was National Coming Out Day. And I I recorded an episode of the podcast that talked about coming out at work and what that was like in a work environment. Not being out at work and being closeted is something that I believe hinders your creativity. It hinders your ability to, be your true self and bring everything about you to that position, to your work, that really the most value that you can bring. And so I think that it's important to be able to bring your 100% true, authentic self to work, so that you can pour that into your job and not utilize that emotional and mental bandwidth to, worry about being outed, to worry about, staying closeted, et cetera. It leads to depression, it leads to stress, anxiety. And so on a personal level, I think it's very important So one piece of advice that I would offer anybody that I've always kept in mind, somebody said this to me when I was younger, is that you try to be the change that you would like to see in the world. And if you would like to see a world where it doesn't matter if you're gay, straight, bi, in the workplace, then you need to show up as that and demonstrate that to everybody else. And so it is a very personal journey. It's a very personal decision. I would recommend anybody to give a listen to Who's Your Data, to that episode that really kind of dives into that process and what it means for anybody. But I recommend, if you are able to do that, to do that. There are organizations today like Out in Tech that are professional networking organizations for the LGBT community. So there's a lot of support out there that you can find. And from more of a career perspective, one other thing that I would recommend to people starting out is really that part about look for where you can make your opportunities, look for where you can make a name for yourself, take on the project that nobody wants to take on. Be on the lookout for issues that you think you might be able to solve or that you might be able to work on, and that will bring value to the organization, even if nobody's asked you to do it. It is with those things that you make a name for yourself. People start to know you and remember your name. And that's when opportunities start to pop up.
Perfect. And thank you so much for sharing that and being honest and brave in that regard. And like you said, if anyone wants any help at all or any support, I'll make sure to attach them links, or by all means, please go and listen to Gilad, because he knows much more about this area than me. But the one thing I take from that is it doesn't matter if you're gay or, like you said, straight or anything else. Everyone has their own battle, or whether it be any type of problem. So the meaning I take from that is, being your true self is where you're going to be able to work best, right? I mean, I can only speak from my experience and hearing from yours. If you're not comfortable somewhere or don't feel like yourself, then it is going to be an uphill battle. So to hear that, I think if anyone's in a situation like that, will be both very uplifting to hear. If Gilad can do it, then why not me? So thanks so much for sharing that. And you sort of touched upon there some advice. Take the projects no one wants to do, make yourself stand out. Naturally, that was one of the main reasons we started this podcast. We get to hear this side of the story. We're fortunate enough to speak with people like yourselves every day, and they tell us this different information on candidates and maybe entry-level people, or maybe people looking for a change, or maybe people that are just looking to get interested and started in the industry. From your perspective as a VP and being someone that looks to hire and stuff like that, what advice would you give to people either wanting to start out or maybe stuck in a rut to help themselves stand out within this industry?
I think there are things that are table stakes, that you bring, some technical skills that, especially in data related fields, to me, the skills that I look for is, for example, good knowledge of SQL, with querying language, knowledge of Python to do data processing and visualization. These, like I said, are sort of table stakes. It's the minimum requirement that I would look for. Yeah. But in order to stand out, I would have to say, when you are looking for a job, or trying to break into an industry, I personally don't read cover letters. I don't think they tell me anything more valuable than what I can read in the resume. It's a lot of times, it's just regurgitating buzzwords. I'm a, self-starter, quick learner, etc. The one tip that I can give you, if you are interested in a job and you are submitting a resume, if you are even lucky enough to, get the first interview, research that company, research what their challenges are, what their goals are, what their business goals are, what are the challenges of the industry that might pertain to them, and then whether it's in your resume, whether it's in your, interview, address how you can be of value to help solve those challenges. When you personalize the skills and the value that you can bring and show that you have thought about that in the context of that company, that makes you stand out.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, hopefully I won't be the only one having to go brush up my resume, make sure I don't have self-starter in there or anything like that. But no, that's definitely what we can echo as well from
Yeah.
when we speak to hiring managers. They all want the personalization, what's going to stand out, what's in it for us, so to speak, and just get straight to the point sometimes maybe,
Exactly.
and have, it's
And
almost like finding the last two pieces of the puzzle to fit together.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with saying that you're a self-starter, but keep in mind that everybody's saying that. And so, and the software, a lot of times today, the bigger companies, there's software that goes through the resumes and will flag, right? So you even have to get through that filter. They're not looking for, like, the fact that you say self-starter on your resume is not going to flag you as a good candidate.
Yeah.
I'm saying, like, that's everybody says that. So you have to think where you can be unique, and ultimately this is true in your interview, this is true on your resume, this is true in your position once you start working. Ultimately, the most unique thing that you can bring to it is your true authentic self, because there's no other person like you in the world.
Yeah. Understood. And you mentioned in terms of technical skills, the bare minimum that you look for. You've obviously been around a while and many things have changed names now and stuff like that. But from a modern day perspective, which areas of tech do you think are the most interesting, or the ones that, you think are going to be the most useful for people to maybe invest time and energy in?
So I think the basics, if you want to work in data, the table stakes is that you are able to communicate with the data. You're able to pull the data. So querying languages are important. MySQL, SQL Server. So learning SQL, table stakes. And then being able to do something with it. So whether it's with data processing, once you've pulled it from the database, and there's an art and a science to pulling from the database to get exactly what you want. Then the data processing. So, nowadays Python is the most prominent language to do that. Visualization. So utilizing visualization libraries, putting together dashboards, whether it be, Google Data Studio or Tableau. These are important, in my experience, sort of basic skills to have. And then beyond that, what is really important for me when I interview candidates are, first and foremost, curiosity around data. Like, see that you are asking questions, that when you look at something, it makes you ask questions. Does all this make sense? Why is this outlier there? Like, what can we do with this? Where can we take this? But then also intuition around data. Like I said, you see a time series and there's one outlier. It's like, does it make sense if there's an outlier? Why is it, this something doesn't look right? Is important. And that's something that you can practice. That's something that you can get a better feel for. But I think those things are the important things that I look for.
Yeah, perfect. And you of course mentioned about the challenges and pertaining that to the story for either that particular company or that particular set of data. What sort of challenges do you face in the modern world now from a data point of view, and what do you think the biggest obstacles are? Of course, AI is a very big hype subject and talked about extensively. From your perspective, what are the biggest challenges you see as a business and a personal, from a sort of individual contributor?
Well, from a business perspective, at least in the world that we live in, one of the biggest challenges with data is that, data is changing. We're used to, we've got our phones and our computers are tracking us. utilizing third-party cookies. And there's just been this influx of humongous amounts of data about everything that we do. And the challenge has been to sift through all of it and find the signals, find the statistically significant patterns that tell a story, and then what to do with that story. But in the next few years, at least in terms of internet usage, the third-party cookie is going to be deprecated. It is not going to be used anymore. And so all of that mountains of data is no longer going to be available. And this was a big blow to advertisers, to companies that are in the space. And so data is changing in that it's going to be a lot more specialized. There's going to be less of it. It will be more sort of siloed from different brands having their first party data. And the challenge is going to be, how do we stitch all of that together in order to still be able to tell the stories that are important?
Yeah, understood.
From our personal perspective, I think that as my podcast tries to illuminate, with data being everywhere, we don't even realize how much of it is everywhere, and where it comes from everything that we do, the apps that we use. Just for example, in recent months, that Amazon acquired Roomba, right? The iRobot, that vacuum cleaning robot. What does that mean? What does that mean for me as a consumer? Suddenly, Amazon has data from millions of robots in people's households that have at the very least mapped out their apartment.
Yeah.
Right? They know how many bedrooms you have. They can take a good guess at how well furnished your apartment is. How much do they bump into things? Maybe there are entire walls where they're not bumping into anything.
Yeah.
That means you have a bare wall. For Amazon, that means maybe an opportunity to sell you something for that wall. And especially the robots that are new, that have cameras, then they don't even have to guess. So I think that from our personal perspective, the challenge that is coming is to understand. I think technology, just our consciousness does not keep up with the advances in technology, and we don't realize the ramifications. And so that, I think, is a big challenge that, like I said, I try to illuminate on the podcast.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good take on it, because I'd probably be guilty of that. That's something that my mum would probably want for Christmas or something to help her around the house. But it's not until you understand that other side of it that maybe a lot of people without access or really understand. And like you said, it just a blank wall, you wouldn't think anything of it. But yeah, like you said, an opportunity straight away. Oh, a great TV could go there, or this could go there, or anything. So it is amazing at the same time, but can also be a bit scary. But enough on the negatives. I don't know. Would you have a robot in your house? Would you have one?
I actually do have one.
Oh, okay.
There is, and this is a fascinating, I think, topic of everybody has their own boundaries, their own sort of red lines that they will or won't cross. For example, I personally I don't use Siri. I don't use, any voice activated technology. I'm not personally comfortable with that because, they listen even when you don't talk to them.
Right.
Does that mean, somebody else might be comfortable with doing that, but not comfortable with having an iRobot in their house? So everybody kind of makes their own decisions. But it's important to have the information, right, and be informed in order to make those decisions for yourself.
Absolutely. And I think if anyone's seen I was guilty of it as well, the Will Smith film, I, Robot, that was my first introduction to artificial intelligence. So everyone's probably wondering if it's tried to kill you yet. But like you said, it's about learning them different stories, and the right things will be okay with some people, and boundaries might be different with others.
Yeah, and you do bring up an excellent point that it is important too. And I think that any AI professional will tell you that, and I always make that joke as well, is that it's just a matter of time before the Roombas become self-aware and try to kill us and right
Yeah.
activate Skynet. But in reality, that kind of like general use AI of having
Yeah.
awareness, something that really is not on the horizon anytime soon.
Yeah.
AI works really well when you give it specific tasks like cleaning your house
Yeah.
or predicting whether or not you are going to be interested in shoes.
Yeah.
But this general kind of consciousness of like just a general being, that's not anywhere near being any kind of reality.
There we go. There might have been a few people holding their breaths there so they can sleep a bit better at night now. We're all
Still
safe in the meantime. And enough on the negatives then and the carnage and chaos part. But in terms of the
Siri is watching
positives,
me, I'll just say that.
yeah. And in terms of the positives, then, there is so much good that comes out of it, and there's great
Absolutely.
things like AI for climate change, AI for good, and other different weird and wonderful organizations. But for you, what do you think the standouts are in terms of things that excite you and the real positives that are data both now and upcoming?
Well, I think in general, like you mentioned, AI for Good and other organizations like that. And by the way, I did speak to the CEO of AI for Good in one of the Who's Your Data episodes, where we talked about how you can utilize AI for social causes,
Yeah.
whether it be climate, whether it be employment, etc. Very interesting conversation. I encourage you to check it out. I think that what we're seeing is that there's just so much that you can do with it for business and for prolonging lifespan, getting rid of poverty, anything there. I have an episode where I talk about how it gets used to help refugee camps
Yeah.
in order to anticipate their needs and sort of stock them. And so there is a lot of good that can be done on a global macro level. If you kind of focus in on the industry and for work, something that's more, relatable to us on a day-to-day level, I'll say that one of the interesting shifts that has happened in the industry over the last couple of decades is that back in my day when I was starting out and trying to do, working with data and employing machine learning algorithms on it, you had to write them yourself. You had to really have intricate knowledge of all of the minutia, the details of what you're doing. And so it was not very accessible
Yeah.
to many people. But since then, if you look at Python, it's got a bunch of machine learning libraries and data processing libraries. It has become more commercialized, and so it is more accessible to people. Today, if you want to run a logistic regression machine learning algorithm, you don't have to write it yourself.
Yeah.
You just, within 3 lines of code of calling importing a Python library or something in R, you run the algorithm. So it makes it a lot more accessible and therefore a lot more useful for a much broader scope of problems. And
Yeah.
so I think that is something that is, the future is making it not only more accessible, but more automated so that it's easier to use and easier to replicate what you're doing.
Absolutely. And that was the thing that really interested me, is just how integrated into society AI and how much easier it makes our lives without knowing. You often don't realize just what it's in and what it's doing for you. So it's really interesting to see where it can take it in terms of them next steps and how it can improve all different areas of life. As you mentioned, refugee, climate change, it can really help us with all areas. So everyone can stop panicking and worrying about the robots and look at the good in it. So that's brilliant. And just in terms of next steps, we highlighted it from a technical point of view, but for you personally, it's great hearing your journey and where you're up to now, and it's been a colorful life for sure. But what's next for Gilad Barash?
Well, for me, I am going to continue. I really enjoy the challenges in my current job, telling
Yeah.
data stories and helping brands engage with their consumers, especially with new challenges, like I mentioned, as far as, traditionally we did it based on third-party cookies. Now we're finding ways to do it without the third-party cookies, without that data. That also allows us to get into other fields that usually have been traditionally more privacy focused, and so we're able to engage with them. And on a personal level, I'm really enjoying hosting my podcast and
Yeah.
finding new guests and new topics to talk about. And really, the purpose of it is to make AI and machine learning and data conversational, so that anybody can understand the ramifications of using it and all the different ways, whether it's, like you said, social good. We have an episode about using data to predict forest fires in California and how that helps management, forest management professionals. So it's just like running the gamut of all the different applications of data and AI, and to continue to explore that.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, it certainly puts it in helped me understand, that's everyone learns through different ways. And for me, hearing people talk in that sort of mannerism has certainly helped me, whether it be through podcasts or videos. So that's one thing that's really interested me, as opposed to just, reading articles and stuff like that. So thank you so much for the work you're doing. And if anyone does want to, of course, check that out, what's the best way to find you? Where can they get it? Of course, we mentioned, I think, Spotify, Apple, and I'll put the links, but is there anything else you want to add in terms of people getting in touch with you or things like that?
Can always reach me on LinkedIn, Gilad Barash. You can send me an email, gilad.barash@gmail.com. Happy always to answer any questions. And check out the podcast.
Excellent. Well, look, thank you so much for being our first guest. Really enjoyed speaking with you, and I hope I didn't do too bad as a host. You certainly carried me through, I'm sure. But yeah, we really appreciate that, and look forward to hopefully having you on again at some point, and likewise with many more other people within the industry.
Yeah, I would love that. And you did amazing. You have a great future ahead of you in podcasting.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. But yeah, anything else you want to add?
No, that's it. It's a Friday afternoon and the
Yeah,
weekend.
I'll leave you to it then. We'll let you go and enjoy yourself, and thanks once again, and look forward to catching up with you soon.
Thank you, Sean. It was a
Cheers.
pleasure.
Take care.